from no flip-flops to ultra-specific haircuts, here's our list of 10 unusual dress codes that will leave you confused, and trust me, some of these had me raising my eyebrows. Now starting off, we have in the 1970s, no pants. While there were advancements between the two genders in the 1970s, that didn't mean that women were granted ultimate freedom. Oh no. Manhattan socialite Nan Kempner found that out firsthand when she showed up to the doors of Basique in a Saint Laurent Le Smoking suit, aka the first female tuxedo. The maitre d' stopped her at the door and discreetly told her she wasn't allowed in while wearing something as shocking as pants. Yes, she as a woman was not allowed to wear pants. Now her, being the badass that she was, instead of leaving, she stripped out of her pants and asked to be shown to her seat wearing nothing but a blazer. To which the maitre d' grabbed the menus and walked her to her table, because being in your underwear was somehow more respectable than wearing pants. Now this is so shocking because it was literally the 70s. I mean, what were these people thinking? Next up, we have ancient Rome stolas. To most people, when looking at an ancient Rome mural, you may think that men and women wore the same outfits, but that's actually not the case. The truth is that the way you draped fabrics in ancient Rome meant different things to different people. Women never really wore the toga unless they were in the working class, and that included a very specific type of woman. Under the empire, working girls, if you get what I mean, were supposedly required to wear the toga, but the authorities were really only policing the dress of upper-class women. If you were what they claimed to be a respectable woman, what you wore instead was a stola, a long tunic, and it was for a very simple reason. It was so that people could tell at a glance who was respectable and who wasn't, which let me just say is messed up. Augustus was very interested in marking the dignity of the upper classes and not letting them be subject to insults on the street. As a signifier of married feminine virtue, it was supposed to ensure the inviolability of respectable citizen wives. Now, one wouldn't want to insult a man by coming onto his wife in public, and a woman didn't want her dignity violated or purity questioned, so the stola helped to keep that in order. Then there's the Victorian times corsets. The 1800s were all about modesty and corsets. A woman of society would have to follow the rules of fashion, sometimes changing up to 8 times a day. Alexis Carrel, perfumer and lecturer at Pratt Institute who's done extensive research on Victorian culture, said. Now I'm sorry, but 8 times a day with all that layering and clothing, that just sounds extremely exhausting and so time consuming. Now, to dress in this way was to signal to the world that you came from money, and if you didn't have a corset, well, you were to be looked down upon for being poor. A woman of leisure was a woman of means. Pale skin, tight corsets, refined dresses of delicate fabrics, embroidered shoes, gloves, all of this would attest to not having to work and thus having money, Alexis explains. A woman of means was expected to embrace fashion and beauty as her job. The heavy dresses conditioned women to stay submissive and become ladies of leisure. There wasn't much you could do when you were wrapped in metal and yards of fabric. Wow, now let me just say, I'm so happy that no one is forced to dress that way anymore. Moving on to Spain, no flip-flops. So, if you didn't know, it's illegal to wear flip-flops while driving in Spain. Now you might actually think that's ridiculous, and at first it is, but they actually have a good reason for this. Drivers are advised that they must have footwear and clothing which does not prevent you from using the controls in the incorrect manner. Now flip-flops could slip off, become wedged under pedals, or prevent you from pressing the pedals. Now drivers face an $85 on-the-spot fine if police believe that the footwear worn by the driver could jeopardize driver safety. For example, if the shoes prevent the pedals from being operated properly, the drivers could land themselves in the hot water with police. But hey, this makes sense to me. Now let's talk about North Korea and their haircuts. North Korea is a very secretive place, but we do know that their past and present leaders are extremely strict. Now there are so many rules that North Koreans have to follow, but the one we'll be talking about today is their haircuts. North Koreans must abide by one of 28 approved haircuts. Unmarried women must have short hair, but married women may have more options. Now the hair of young men should be less than 2 inches long, and older men can go as long as 2 inches and 3/4. Yeah, talk about strict. Then there's Sudan No Makeup. In 2010, 7 Sudanese male models were fined for wearing makeup by judges in northern Sudan under controversial indecency laws. The models and the women who applied the makeup had been taking part in a show called Sudanese Next Top Model. Now their lawyer had argued that the men frequently have to wear makeup to appear on television, but the judges, located where Islamic law applies, decided it was indecent for men to wear makeup. Now the 8 defendants were each ordered to pay 200 Sudanese pounds, aka $80. Under Northern Sudan indecency laws, they could have faced jail time or been flogged, but that is just insane. On to Elizabethans Leopard Fur. When Queen Beth I was in power in England, there were correct furs and incorrect furs for every person. And if you wore a kind that was fancier than your station, oh, you'd have to watch out. Now the fanciest furs in the kingdom, ermine, which was reserved for royalty only, as well were the furs of genets, lucerne, and leopards. Leopards were seen as extremely high-end, and the laws made it quite clear that people weren't allowed to get into them unless they were of the correct rank. Now today you can wear any fur you want, but you might be looked down upon the organization of PETA. Now let's discuss Puritans handmade lace. When the Puritans came to America, they decided to bring some pretty restrictive dress codes along with them from Europe. They mostly had to do with modesty. Skirts on women had to be floor length, for example, though the modern belief that they only wore black is false, as they often wore red, yellows, and greens. But the real focus of early dress codes in America was accessories, and what poor people were allowed to get away with. For example, a 1651 law passed in Massachusetts prevented anybody whose income fell behind a certain level from wearing gold or silver lace, scarves, silk, or basically just anything fun. Now the most upsetting thing though is that they were also disallowed from wearing bone lace, another name for bobbin or homemade lace of the period. Now that is just crazy that they'd even be allowed to enforce something like that. Medieval and Renaissance Italy was interesting to say the least. Their fashion-related laws were often completely focused on women, thanks to some messed up beliefs of misogyny and a religion-based view that women were sinners. So that's nice. Now Italy was divided into city-states and they all had different laws, but women living in Renaissance Siena had a particularly interesting difficulty. They were only allowed to wear plain circlets made of silver on their heads, and they had to weigh less than 2 ounces. Now to be honest, something weighing anything more would give me a headache, I'm sure, but it's crazy that they literally had to weigh them. And lastly, we have in several countries, there's no camo. Believe it or not, camouflage wear is illegal in several countries around the globe. So if you're packing for a vacation, don't bother bringing it. Camouflage is illegal to wear in more than a dozen countries, including many popular Caribbean cruise destinations like Barbados, Jamaica, and St. Lucia. It's often because the government wants only members of the military to be wearing those colors, the Royal Caribbean International said on its website. Now cruise lines may not prohibit camouflage on board, but it said that it could cause trouble if passengers manage to get off the ship at a port where it's prohibited. Passengers could be fined depending on the place and how strict their rules are. Joanna Cuther, a New York City-based travel agent and owner of Portside Travel Consultants, told USA Today. However, she did say that it's unlikely that they'd be arrested, which I guess is good. Travelers caught with camouflage in a number of Caribbean destinations also will be forced to give it to the authorities, Royal Caribbean said on its website. So the safest bet is just to avoid it at all costs. Well, that's all for our list of 10 unusual dress codes that will leave you confused. Now which one do you think is the strangest? Let us know in the comments down below, and don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. I'm your host for today, Emily, and we'll see you next time. Peace.